Thanks for coming. My name is Ben Sigelski. I'm the sustainability coordinator for the city. This is Devin. He's with Keep Pinellas Beautiful. He's talking about plastics as a whole. We actually do have a park cleanup at Sheffield Park next weekend, so if you're interested in participating in that, I can talk to you about it later. Take it away.
Yeah, hopefully this will be at least somewhat inspiring for what you need to, or what we can do to make a difference. And getting out there and doing these cleanups is a huge part of making that difference. But yes, my name is Devin Frank. I'm the education program coordinator with Keep Pinellas Beautiful. And basically, I'm going to just start off the presentation just by giving you a little bit of just background as to who we are and what we do, so that you have a sense of why I'm here and what I'm doing and all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, we'll jump into, I know it says a macro look at microplastics, but as I was telling Ben earlier, this is more a story of plastics, as I call it, basically from start to finish. It's really more a focus on single-use plastics than anything else. So let's just jump straight in. If it lets me. Oh, because I clicked out of it. Now I should be good. There we go. OK. So who are we? Well, we are Keep Pinellas Beautiful. So out of curiosity, have you heard of us before? Yeah. You have? Awesome. OK. Well, that's my presentation. I hope you got, no, I'm just kidding. I actually have things to say. So we are Keep Pinellas Beautiful. We are the local affiliate of Keep America Beautiful right here in Pinellas County. Keep America Beautiful, which usually more people have heard of, started back in 1952, 1953, really primarily as an ad campaign. So basically, litter started to be a problem. It just so happened that was the same time, as you're about to learn, as the mass production of single-use plastics. Is that a coincidence? Lots more single-use plastics, lots more litter? No, it's not a coincidence, but we're going to learn that too. So basically, they started, this group started Keep America Beautiful, and they started creating advertisements to try to get people to stop littering, to bring awareness to it. So they partnered with characters like Lassie and Woody Woodpecker and Smokey the Bear. It was working. It was making a difference. But people were obviously still littering, since, you walk outside, you can still see it these days. They started growing. They started partnering with other little grassroots organizations and actually getting people out to do cleanups and things like that. And it's been growing and growing. It's still growing. It's at the point now that Keep America Beautiful is the nation's largest community improvement nonprofit organization. They've got about 750 affiliates across the country. It's actually up to 50 affiliates right here in Florida, with your local affiliate being us, Keep Pinellas Beautiful. So our mission specifically is to conserve and beautify our natural environment by means of community engagement and education. So our three big words we focus on when it comes to the environment also starts with an E: educate, engage, and empower. So we want to first off educate people. Yeah, hi. That's what I do. That's my job as the education program coordinator, is teaching people about the various issues. People may not understand why one person's litter can harm the planet. They may not understand why invasive plants are harmful and native plants are good, or whatever the topic is. So we teach about that. But then we don't want to just stop there and walk out the door and that's it. Teaching is the first step because people need to know. But we actually want to get people engaged. We want to actually get people doing beach cleanups. So kudos to you guys for doing one in a week. Doing beach cleanups, planting trees, planting native plants, gardening projects, whatever it is. Because when people get their hands dirty, both literally and metaphorically, that's when they start to feel like they're making a difference. They start to feel empowered because they are making a difference when they're doing those things. Suddenly they realize, oh, all I need to do is skip the straw or just keep my reusable bags in the trunk of my car, and then I'll remember to use them. It's the little things. When we all do the little things, it adds up to something big. And that's really what it's all about. Basically, Keep Pinellas Beautiful, we're here as the cheerleaders, essentially, for getting the community involved in what we do. So just to kind of give you an idea of what we do with Keep Pinellas Beautiful, just looking at last year alone, in 2023, we hosted just under 1,300 community projects. That's your cleanups, tree plantings, native plantings, removing invasive plants, all those sorts of things. People always come up to me and they say, when is your next event? Well, first off, we have our newsletter and our calendar up here as a QR code. But they always ask me, when is your next event? And I always say, yeah, it's coming. We do an average of 26 to 27 events a week. So yes, they're happening all the time. So even if you're just bored and you're looking for something to do, there you go. Come and join us for one of our events. You get outside, you get some fresh air, all that kind of stuff. Plus, you're helping to contribute to things like this. Through these events, we removed about 167,000 pounds of litter. We planted about 3,500 native plants and trees. We removed about 79,000 pounds of invasive plant material. We gave about 640 educational presentations, participated in 72 educational outreach events. We helped educate about 27,000 people last year, but this is the most important number in my eyes. It's the 20,000 volunteers who stepped up to help us with what we do. There's no other way we can do what we do without people wanting to come together and help and do this. We're only now a staff of 10. We were a staff of 8 or 9 at some point during this year. We can't do this by ourselves. It's because people care and they get together and they want to help is why we're able, any of these numbers. So when I say our impact, I don't mean Keep Pinellas Beautiful, our staff. I mean our communities. That's how we make a difference, is people care. And just one other way to look at this is this all helped save taxpayers about $1.5 million that would have otherwise had to be used in removing the litter and removing all those invasive plants and all that kind of stuff. So there's amazing benefits for the economy, let alone the environment with what we do. But it's because the community, the people, make it happen. That's the amazing thing. So that's just a little bit about us and what we do. Let's jump straight in here now to the topic of the day, kind of work our way in here. So what is one of the world's biggest environmental issues? Well, clearly there's a lot going on, but the main one we're going to start focusing on is trash. Yes, we need to start talking about all this plastic stuff. We got to start with the issue of trash. So, trash in the United States. The average person on a daily basis makes about 4.5 pounds of trash. That's about the weight of 1 gallon of milk, just to kind of give you an eyeball reference. In Pinellas County, do you want to guess, is it more or less on average? More, yeah, it is. It's about 8 pounds, almost double is what we're making right here in Pinellas County. That's about 2 gallons of milk of weight of trash we're making every day. Essentially, I love my animations and sound effects. You're going to learn that real quick. In Tampa Bay, it's about 2.6 million pounds of trash we're making every single day. That's about the weight of 200 African elephants. So every day, that's what we're throwing out. It's a lot. It's a lot of trash we're making. And basically, trash is the waste that we make, and litter is waste out of place. Did you know that littering is bad? Have you heard that before? Yeah. Do you still see litter outside? Yeah. Most people know that littering is bad. So why? Why do people litter? Why? They're what?
Lazy.
They're lazy. That is definitely one of the reasons. People are just lazy. They say, oh, the garbage can is way over there. No, I'm not going to go all the way over there. No, it's too far. I'm just going to leave my stuff here. Any other reasons you guys can think of? Why else do people litter?
It's like a not my problem attitude.
Sure, it's a not my problem attitude. Yeah, not my problem. There's other people who pick it up. That's their problem. I'm not going to worry about it. Yeah, not my problem. I don't care. Not my issue. Lazy. These are good. Can you think of 1 or 2 more? Maybe they want to throw stuff out, but there's no trash cans. Maybe the waste management system itself just doesn't exist. They don't know what else to do. Or maybe there are some trash cans, but they're overflowing, and people will still put their stuff on top of that overflowing pile. It's probably going to fall. There's a lot of reasons. I even heard one person recently was just like, there's too many problems in the world. I can't worry about all of them. There are so many reasons why people choose to litter. The issue is ownership. People don't seem to associate litter as being their problem. They think, trash, I'm done with it. I'm throwing it away. It's no longer my issue. But that's the problem, is trash is still your responsibility to dispose of properly. If you can't find a garbage can to throw it away, you brought it in, you can take it out and wait until you can find one, is basically the issue. And yes, we all litter by accident. It happens to all of us. But there's intentional littering and unintentional littering. Intentional littering, people littering on purpose, is about 85% of all litter. People are doing it knowing that they're doing it. We all litter by accident. It happens to all of us. We drop something without realizing we're doing it. We can't necessarily do anything about that, but we can do something to change littering on purpose. That's one thing we can focus on. Especially because when we litter, does your litter just sit still in that spot forever and ever? No. No. Where does the litter end up going eventually?
Ocean.
Yeah, to the ocean. Ooh. There we go. With the wind and the rain and all that kind of stuff, we all live in a watershed, and the water flows to a common point, And being on a coastal watershed, eventually, especially here, everything goes to the ocean. Even if you're living in the middle of the country, things go to streams, to rivers, to all the way out to everything. Everything makes its way to the ocean eventually. That is where litter goes, where it becomes what's called marine debris. And you've probably heard marine debris before. So what is marine debris? Well, the very technical definition by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is that it is any persistent solid material that is manufactured or processed and directly or indirectly, intentionally or unintentionally, disposed of or abandoned into the marine environment or Great Lakes. That is a very long, fancy way of saying anything made by people that ends up in the ocean that's not supposed to be there. Boom. That's marine debris. So can you give me some examples? What could be marine debris?
Plastic bags.
Sure, plastic bags. What else? Hint, anything made by people.
Shopping carts.
Shopping carts, very good. Table, a wall, my shoes. Maybe not my shoes, hopefully not my shoes, but anything made by people that ends up in the ocean that's just not supposed to be there is marine debris. So yes, some common kinds, we talked about plastic bag, other kinds of plastic, a derelict boat, fishing gear, any of that kind of stuff that's left out there that's not supposed to be there is technically marine debris. But the most common kind of marine debris are single-use plastics. Anywhere between 50 to 95% of all marine debris is single-use plastic. And this problem is just getting worse and worse. What this graph is showing is that over time, basically we are making more and more and more and more single-use plastic. It just is exponentially growing how much we make every single year. We're just making more and more and more of it, and where else is it going to go but out into the environment eventually, unfortunately. So let's take a little history lesson here as we jump into the story of plastics and kind of find how we're at where we're at today, essentially. So we'll start with this fun little clip from the movie The Graduate.
I just want to say one word to you. Just one word.
Yes, sir.
Are you listening?
Yes, sir.
Plastics.
So exactly how do you mean?
There's a great future in plastics. Think about it. What do you think about it?
Yes, I will.
Enough said. That's a deal.
Okay, so this movie came out, I think, what did it say, 1967, something like that. So back at that time, the plastics industry was booming. So this is an example, if you don't know the movie, Dustin Hoffman, the main character here, he's just finished college, and he's come back home, he's trying to figure out what to do with his life, and this neighborly figure comes up to him and basically gives the advice, go into plastics. Like, that's where everything is right now. Like, it was a booming industry. Like, plastics, and this is the thing, is don't get me wrong, plastics are awesome. Because of plastics, I have my computer. Because of plastics, I have my glasses. Because of plastics, we have medical technology. Because of plastics, we have the camera. Because of plastics, we can preserve our food longer. These are all things that plastic allows us to do. Just a very small drop of the things, the benefits it gives us. But the problem isn't just plastics. The problem is single-use plastics. That's where the real issue comes in. That's where the environment, those get in the environment so much more often, because things like my computer or my glasses or whatever are not going to be thrown out after one use. They last a lot longer than that. They're not just single use and throw them out. So in 1950, we already have 2 million tons of single-use plastics that have been made. So it's already, we're at that amount that's already been purchased, or not purchased, but made. 1960, just 10 years later, the first report of a seabird negatively interacting with plastic first comes out. It only took about 10 years for that to first be seen. In 1972 was the first actual report of small pieces of floating plastics in our oceans. We're going to talk about that a lot more in depth as we keep going, what those are and what that means. But in 1987 is when scientists really started to actually study this stuff. They were using net tows, which is like what's on the screen right now. Essentially, as you drive your boat along, you drag this net behind your boat, and they use that for collecting plankton, like a little tiny organism in the ocean for them to study that. But they were finding they were also collecting little pieces of plastic. And so they decided, well, let's actually study the plastic by using the net tow, since we're collecting it already anyway. So they started using these net tows to get an idea of how much plastic was in the oceans, essentially. In 2003 is when the term garbage patch first came out. Have you guys heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch by chance? It's basically what's thought to be a large floating island of plastic in the Pacific Ocean. It's not the only one, by the way. There's one in the middle of every gyre of every ocean. This is the biggest one, just because the Pacific Ocean is the biggest. But it's not an island. That's sort of a misnomer of a way. It's more like a soup. There's more concentration of plastics in that area. You could not walk on this. Like you see in like movies and TV shows and stuff, they make it look like you could walk on all this plastic. It's not that thick. But it is a higher concentration of plastics that are in that middle of the spinning gyre, essentially in these oceans. In 2010, that's right, I forgot about this. Basically, we've got now at that point about 100 million metric tons of plastic that is estimated to be within 50 kilometers of coastlines. If you were to count all that plastic at 1 pound per second, it would take you 19,216 years just to count all that plastic. So wow. Yeah, we're already at the point where trying to estimate the amount of plastic in our oceans is getting to be an unreasonably big number. Just another way to look at that. That is the same weight as 302 Empire State Buildings. If you were to stack them end to end, that would stretch from Tampa to Orlando, which is a lot of plastic. Also in 2010, interesting, a study came out that summarized all of the data to date from those net tows, basically over 25 years. And this is what they showed, is basically these colorful dots. The blue dots show where the concentration of plastics was the lowest. The red dots are going to be where the concentration was the highest. So looking at these maps right here, what color is the most common, or is like the most prevalent color that you see on looking at these maps? Is it blue? It's not blue. No. It's not blue. Give you a clue, it's not red either. This is a trick question. The answer is white. White, and white represents the oceans. So, I mean, looking at it, you can see clearly there is so much of our oceans we still haven't even looked at yet. This is by 2010. There's still so much that we don't know. Sure, it's about 20 or about 14 years ago now, but there's so much that we still don't know about our oceans, even just by 2010. So, sorry, trick question. Yeah, okay. All right, moving a little further ahead, 2015. We're now at the point there's the average person is using about 306 pounds of plastic per year. That's about the same weight as the heaviest players in the NFL. Additionally, that same year, a study came out that showed that in the United States, we are using 50 million single-use bottles every day. If you were to stretch those end to end, that would stretch from Beijing to Los Angeles. And that's every day how much single-use plastics, just the bottles we're using. So today, about 10 years past that, the question is, how much plastic is actually in our oceans? We don't actually know. There's a lot of reasons why we don't know. But based on all of these estimates and what we know is going in versus what's littered versus what's recycled versus all these things, we know that there's a lot of it out there, a lot. And we know it's in every ocean. But based on these estimates of what we basically know is out there, more than 95% of it we can't find. But we know it's out there. So where is it? Yeah, maybe it's not at the surface. Maybe it sank to the bottom. Where else? Remember that map that I showed you guys? How much of the ocean we haven't even looked at yet? Could be somewhere we haven't even looked yet. The pieces could be in the middle of the water column. They could be washed up on the shore. They could be inside animals. They could be in microplastics. We're going to talk about that too. There's a lot of places where this plastic could be. I mean, based on how much is out there, you should just be able to go out, look at the ocean, and be like, oh my gosh, look at all that, just from the shoreline. But the stuff is out there. What we know is that every year, on average, 8 million metric tons of plastic goes into our ocean every year. That's the amount that goes in every year. Just to kind of help you convert that into something more imaginable, that's about the same weight as 1.5 trillion grocery bags. Again, I guess that's not much more imaginable, is it? It's hard to picture a pile of 1.5 trillion grocery bags. I always like to do the distance thing. If you stack those end to end, how far would that stretch? Unfortunately, it would stretch from the Earth to the sun 65 times. So that's how much plastic we are putting in our ocean every year, on average. 2020, 35 million metric tons is what is estimated to have gone into our oceans in just 1 year. So let's dissect that number. All right, 35 million metric tons. 1 metric ton, by the way, is 1,000 kilograms, which is like 2,200 pounds, just FYI. So a lot. So 35 million metric tons. That's about, now let's convert this, instead of plastic bags, we're doing straws, because why not? So that's about 87.5 trillion straws in weight that went into our ocean in 1 year. Stretch those end to end, 11.74 billion miles. In order to make sense of what that means, because that's, again, an incomprehensible number, we're going to have to look at the solar system to understand this one. Yeah, not just the Earth to the sun, but the whole solar system. So the distance from sun to Pluto, we're going to pretend Pluto's still a planet here for a little bit. From sun to Pluto is 3.7 billion miles. So in the year 2020, we put enough plastic in the ocean that's the same as, like the same weight as straws, that would stretch from the sun to Pluto 3.25 times. So much plastic went into our oceans in 1 year. This isn't how much is in our oceans. This is what went into the ocean in just the year 2020. By the way, if you wanted to travel that distance, it would take you 17.4 hours traveling at the speed of light. The big takeaway from this is that if we keep going at this rate, by 2050, it's not that far away, 26 years. By 2050, we will have more plastic in the ocean than every fish combined. They will outweigh every single fish. That is the direction we are going right now. That is what is happening in our planet. And as I'm saying, the big issue, it's not just plastic. The big issue is single-use plastics. And so what are single-use plastics? Well, they're plastics that are designed to be used once and then disposed of. That's what the big issue is. So I have in this bag right here, move this other stuff out of the way, the top 10 littered items on the planet, which is actually, this data is collected by the Ocean Conservancy as part of the International Coastal Cleanup. Today happens to be the International Coastal Cleanup. It is the main day of it. So there are cleanups happening today around the entire world that people all have data sheets that they're literally tallying every single piece of litter they're picking up. All that data gets turned into Ocean Conservancy, and they come up with amazing stats and statistics to help report to managers, to find out where the biggest problems of litter are, what those types of litters are, all the sorts of things. And I can tell you, every year they come up with the top 10 littered items on the planet. And in most recent years, most of those items, if not all of those items, are single-use plastics. So in this bag, I have the top 10 littered items in the world. I want you guys to try to guess what those top 10 items are. And I've got my cheat sheet right here. So what do you guys think? What do I got in this bag?
Cigarette butts.
People don't normally get that one, but that is number one. You probably, yeah, you saw me come in with this. So yes, cigarette butts. This is the number one littered item on the planet. There's about 4.5 to 5 trillion of these that are littered every year. That is a lot. And yes, these are a single-use plastic. They do have a plastic filter in them. So these are not, they're not just natural. And the chemicals, also studies show, are really bad for the planet too. So there's nothing healthy for your body or for the planet about these things. So there you go. There's your number one. What else we got in your top 10? Huh? Bottles, yes. That in this year was number 2. Wow, you guys are doing really well. You're going like right in order here. 1, 2. Yes. Plastic bags. We've got 2 different kinds of plastic bags. You got your grocery bag, which is number 5. And then we've also got just other kinds of bags. So like your Ziploc bags, garbage bags, that kind of stuff. That's number 6. Straws. Do I have one in here? I should have one in here. Yes, there it is. Straws. This is number 10.
Bottle caps count as their own.
Haha, bottle caps. Very good. It's in here somewhere. It better be. There it is. I see it. Bottle cap is number 4. There you go. Bottle cap.
How many more do we have?
Let's see. I can just keep going here to save some time. Number 3, food wrappers. different kinds. So chip bags, candy wrappers, granola bars, whatever is wrapped in plastic. There's your number 3. Number 4 was bottle caps. Number 5 was grocery bags. 6, other kinds of plastic bags. Number 7, foam food containers. There you go. This is number 7. Number 8, plastic food containers, like this guy. Number 9, the one thing in the top 10 that is not plastic is a paper cup or paper plate. And then number 10 was straws. So there you go. There's your top 10, you guys. So 9 of the 10 single-use plastics. And it does change a little bit each year. But in basically all of the years that they've been doing this, there's only 1 year that cigarette butts were not number 1 on this list. And that year they were number 2. So basically single-use plastics. Most littered items on the planet. There you go. And then it's more fun to do it that way. Otherwise, I've got the pictures here too. But this is much less fun than actually having the bag of stuff. All right. So how does that plastic get in the ocean? Well, does it just fall off of boats? I mean, a little bit does, sure. But about 80% of what we find in the ocean starts on land. It washes through watersheds and works its way out to the ocean. So it's going to get in the ocean if it's not collected by street sweepers, if it doesn't get collected in storm drains, which is not the job of these things, by the way. They'll flood and flood your street if that happens. Or if people don't just pick it up. Basically, your litter, this plastic stuff, it's going to get in the ocean. So what are some problems with the reason why we were talking about this in the first place? Well, first off, it travels quickly. So it's not just your problem, it becomes everybody's problem when it gets in the ocean. It destroys habitats. It can smother coral reefs. It can smother seagrass beds. Clearly, those habitats are needed, by animals and things for what they need. It transports invasive species. So here, we got some gooseneck barnacles that attached to a bottle and traveled who knows how far to places they're not supposed to go. And invasive species can cause a lot of havoc on ecosystems. When it piles up, removing it costs a lot of money. We don't always have all that money that we have to spend, but we got to get rid of it. Clearly, it's navigation and safety hazards. Would you want to go swimming in that water that guy is surfing in or that boat is traveling through? No, that looks terrible. That looks super unhealthy. It's awful. And it hurts tourism. There's actually studies, and this is huge for Tampa Bay, is that there are studies that show the more litter on beaches, the less tourists that come. We need tourists to come to Tampa Bay because they bring money with them. When they bring money, it keeps our whole economy moving. So honestly, I mean, you can make this connection that litter actually hurts our local economy because it does. It's not a stretch to say that. So therefore, we have to stop it. We have to prevent it from piling up here in this area because we can't let it. We have to keep the tourists coming. And that's very expensive too, hiring people and, for just that purpose of walking the beach multiple times a day, just picking up what they see. And of course, when I ask kids why is litter bad, the first thing they say is it hurts animals, which is absolutely true. So, I mean, this is a great demo to do with kids, but it works for adults too. Pretend that this is the ocean, and this is floating around. It might be hard to see from where you're sitting, but in this ocean right here, this is a plastic bag. And if you were a sea turtle swimming around and you saw this, what might this look like to you? Yeah, like food. It looks like a jellyfish. And sea turtles love jellyfish. They're going to eat it. You think, is this good or bad for a sea turtle? That's bad. Yeah. No, this is not going to do anything. Is the sound still okay? That's the first time I've ever done that. Wow. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Whew. Yes. Whew, I'm glad that I didn't wreck anything. Okay. Yeah. It's bad. Sea turtles cannot, well, they do eat it, but it's really bad for them. It gets stuck in their bellies. And when it gets stuck in their bellies, they can't digest anything anymore. They can't digest that. They can get really, really sick and possibly even die. I was just making sure you guys were all still awake. That's really what I was doing. So as of 2016, we know of at least 690 species that have interacted with plastic in a bad way, whether they get tangled by it or eat it or whatever it might be. I always like to point out specifically seabirds. So within those 690 species, 80 species of seabirds have been documented interacting with this stuff, getting tangled, eating it. But it's not just that. It's 90% of every single bird. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. This is so bad for these birds. And it's basically every single one of them, not just a small sampling. It's just insanity. But the big issue that we're talking about, plastics versus other types of litter. And don't get me wrong, other litter is bad too, but the other litter will go away. Papers, aluminum, all that kind of stuff, they are naturally occurring materials. They do eventually decompose. They actually do eventually go away. In the time they're out there, they can cause harm, but at least they will go away. Plastic is not a naturally occurring type material. There is no naturally existing bacteria or microbes that eat it to decompose it. So plastic, when it gets in the environment, it is in the environment forever. That's just the way that it is. And so this is the thing, is we ask the question, well, how long until it's gone? Meaning, how long until the pieces have broken down so much that you just can't see it anymore? It's still there, but you just can't see it. So let's turn on your guessing power here, and we'll go through each of these like one at a time. So we're going to start with, and I know it's small on the screen, the two that are circled right now are apple core and cardboard box. Clearly not plastic. How long is it going to take with these when they're littered and in the environment, in the ocean, until these will actually decompose and go away? How long is that going to take?
1 to 2 months.
1 to 2 months? Very good. It's about 2 months. Yeah, very, very good. Yeah. Have you seen this graphic before?
Not this one.
Not this one, but ooh, you might know some of these. Okay, all right, cool. Yeah. So about 2 months is how long it takes, and those will actually be gone. So good. They're out of the environment. The materials have returned to the earth. Good. Cigarette butt. How long till it's gone? Meaning how long? Because remember, it's just single-use plastics now. How long until you just can't see it anymore? Well, okay, so that is a good point. She said probably never. So correct, the plastic will be in the environment forever. But the question here is how long until it's broken down into pieces so small you can't see it anymore?
10 years.
About 10 years? It's about 1 to 5 years. That's how long it takes till it's gone. But you're absolutely right. It's not gone, you just can't see it. Plastic bag. How long?
10 to 20.
Very good. Yeah, you definitely know your stuff. 10 to 20 years is about how long. The studies show it's about 13 minutes is the average amount of time somebody uses a plastic bag. And then it's in the environment in its large form for 10 to 20 years until you can't see it anymore. Styrofoam cup and plastic beverage holder, like a six-pack ring. They're both circled because they're both the same. How many years?
200.
Not a bad guess. We're not quite that high yet. We're getting there though. 50 years for these. So yeah, so for that plastic styrofoam cup you use for having your drink at lunch, if it's not disposed of right, it's in the environment for 50 years. And yeah, styrofoam is plastic, by the way. A plastic bottle. You know your stuff. 450. Yeah, 450 years. Yes. It's how long that takes for that to break down. I like to use the example, pretend that George Washington, as he was crossing the Delaware, happened to accidentally drop a plastic bottle. Clearly he didn't because it didn't exist at the time. But pretend he did. That would still be in the environment in that form for another 200 years. This stuff is in the environment for a long time. And the last one we'll do, clearly I covered some up because we don't have time for all of them, but fishing line. How long fishing line until that's gone?
1,000.
Not a bad guess. It's about 600 years for that one. So, but yeah, if fishing line gets stranded out there and I think that's enough time for a sea turtle to accidentally swim into it and get tangled, and probably, yeah, if it's stuck out there for 600 years, there's probably going to be some animal that gets tangled in it, which is a problem. But yeah, so what are microplastics? Yeah, so well, microplastics, micro means small, and plastics means plastics. So they are small pieces of plastic. That's what microplastics are. By definition, they are less than 5 millimeters in size. And this is a relatively new science. Like really since the 1980s is when it really just started. And even then it was slow. It's in the last 10 to 15 years, maybe 20 years, that it's more exploded of a topic that everyone's talking about now. Have you heard of microplastics before? Just out of curiosity. Learning brand new stuff. I like it. Okay. So there's two different types of microplastics out there. You got primary and secondary. So primary are going to be like little plastic pellets, like nurdles is what they're called. They're made by the plastic producing companies that basically you can then melt those little pellets and shape them into like plastic bags or plastic bottles, whatever it is. Or you've also got microbeads, and that's the bottom picture, like on that person's finger. These microbeads, for the most part, are used in like facial scrubs and deodorant and toothpaste and that kind of stuff. Because when you scrub it on your face or whatever, you can feel the little bits of plastic scratching your face. And you're like, oh, that's making a difference. I can feel it. I can feel it. What you're feeling is you're just rubbing plastic on your face. That's what you're feeling. Luckily, 2015, the United States passed an act that was the Microbead-Free Waters Act. That in the United States, we can no longer make products with microbeads in them. So oftentimes you'll find toothpaste or facial scrubs that say new and improved. What that means is just no longer has microbeads. But that's not international. So I can tell you internationally, there's definitely still a lot of products that have, and it didn't cover quite everything in the US even, that have plastic just in it for the purpose of it being there. Doesn't do anything. So that's primary. What we're probably more familiar with, though, is secondary. And secondary microplastics is when your big pieces of plastic get in the ocean and they break down over time. And they just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And I could be here literally through the rest of the day just going in smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and just forever and ever because they never go away. So basically how that happens, your main ingredient, other than the plastic itself, is sunlight. The UV rays from the sun beat down on that plastic and make it really fragile and brittle. And basically then when you mix in wind and waves and currents and all that kind of stuff moving it around, it starts to break apart. And basically you've got microplastics. So, demo time. All right, over to the blender. So, this is just, I love to do this with kids, but it works really well with adults too, honestly. That here is our ocean. You know, nice and clean. Here we go. We are going to put into our ocean 4 straws. We got a blue, a clear, a red, and a yellow. Yes, this is actually marine debris. That is actual straws that we found doing our beach cleanups. So now we're going to put our ocean, well, I'm going to put it back on here. If it will go, turn it that way. There we go. All right. So basically we're just going to speed up time. We're not going to sit here and wait for them to be microplastics with the sun. We're going to pretend the sun is beating down on these. We're going to turn on the currents, the waves, and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to see what happens to these 4 straws. I always feel like I'm setting up a magic trick when I'm doing this. I promise you this is not a magic trick. It always feels like it though. All right, let's pass some time. Time has passed. All right, so clearly now we can see these are smaller pieces that are in here. My question for you though is, of the 4 straws that I put in here, how much of those 4 straws are still in here? Yeah, it's all still in here, right? Absolutely, all 4 of those straws are still in here. If I was to blend it more, I'm not going to because I do still want to actually like strain these and actually not get these in the ocean when I'm pouring them out. What would happen to these pieces if I blended it more? They get smaller. And then what would happen if I blended it again? Smaller, right? Smaller, 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 till eventually you wouldn't be able to see these pieces anymore. But at that point, how much of the 4 straws is still in here? It's all still in there. You can't see it anymore, but all of it is still in there. And that is basically what's going on. That we just can't see it out there. The pieces are so small, we just can't see it, but we know that it's out there. There is a lot that we don't know about microplastics still. There's a lot that we don't know, but we know that risks increase with time because the more time that passes, the more that they break down into smaller pieces and it becomes more of an issue. And we know these things are found everywhere. So where are they? Microplastics, they're found at the surface of every ocean on the planet. They're found washed up on the shorelines. They've been found in samples of Arctic ice. They've been found in the deepest parts of the ocean, all the way down at the Mariana Trench. It's not just the ocean. These things are found in freshwater systems too. Lakes, rivers, streams, reservoirs, all those sorts of things. The pieces are so small they are floating in the air. It's in our tap water. It's in bottled water. It's in beer. It's in everything. Thinking about just the surface of the oceans right now, the average estimate of how many pieces are floating at the surface of the oceans is about 35 trillion. That's about the average estimate. That's about 150 times the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. That's just the surface of the oceans that we're talking about, nowhere else on the planet. So there's a lot of this stuff out there. So why are microplastics even worse than the big plastics that are out there? Well, now the little animals get to get in on the fun too. They get to ingest this stuff whether knowingly or not. Sometimes it looks like little bits of food. Other times the pieces are just so small, it gets in their gills, their mouths, whatever it is. The big animals too, without even knowing that it's getting in because the pieces are just so small. And what's interesting about microplastics is they're called this cocktail of chemical contaminants. It's kind of a mouthful right there. But basically, the plastic itself has bad chemicals in it. That if an animal eats it and tries to digest the plastic, it's got that bad stuff in the first place. But plastic, when it's in the water, is a great surface for what are called hydrophobic chemicals that are floating in the water itself to stick to. Those chemicals don't want to be in the water. They're looking for some kind of surface to stick to. What better surface than plastic? So you've got this whole list of all of these bad chemicals that are in the water. They stick to the surface of the plastic. And basically, the plastic itself can be 1,000,000 times more toxic than the surrounding water because it's collecting all these things. And what happens, why we're talking about this now, clearly it sticks to the big plastics too. But basically what happens is as these plastics get smaller and smaller, picture like a ball of plastic in the ocean. You've got the surface area, you've got the outside this half, you've got the outside this half. When that ball breaks apart into two pieces, you still have the same surface area, but now you have more. You have the inside walls as well. So as these pieces keep breaking down more and more and more, your total surface area actually increases by a lot. And as you get a lot more surface area, that's a lot more surface for these bad chemicals to stick to. So basically, you got more of these bad chemicals then that are getting into animals' bodies because there's just more surface for it to stick to when they either eat it intentionally or unintentionally. And what studies are starting to show is animals who are eating this stuff, they are wasting their energy. They are trying to digest something that they just can't digest. Animals are not migrating as far because they have plastic in their systems. They just can't do it. Animals that are eating microplastics are growing at a much slower rate. They're getting sick. They're getting tumors. They're getting cancer when they're eating this stuff. Animals are having much fewer babies and less healthy babies at it, basically, that they're ingesting plastic. So essentially what's happening is our populations of marine species are just shrinking, and what's left is just less healthy because of all this plastic in the waterway, unfortunately. But there's one thing one type of animal we haven't mentioned yet. You know what kind of animal that is we haven't mentioned yet? Us. We eat the animals that are eating the microplastics. Basically, we know of at least 49 commercial species that are regularly eating plastic that we also eat. So are we, people, ingesting microplastics? Well, a few years ago, there was a fecal study that was done. Somebody had the really fun job of going around the world, like the Netherlands, the United States, Japan. Like they went to a whole bunch of countries. And their job was to dissect people's poop, to look and see, are they passing microplastics through their bodies? I want you guys to try to guess, of all the samples that they looked at, what percentage of samples do you think they found microplastics in their poop? Yeah, everybody, 100%. Every single sample had microplastics in it. Right now, the estimate is that the average American is eating a credit card worth of plastic every week. That is the average estimate for Americans. You might be saying, wait. I'm a vegetarian. I'm a vegan. I'm good. I'm not eating these animals. Well, to those people, I like to say, well, there's microplastics in sea salt. There's microplastics in the dirt. So it's getting into the veggies you eat. Also, remember, it's floating in the air and it's in the water you drink. So I like to say, well, do you breathe the air and or do you drink water? Because if you do either of those two things, you have microplastics in your body. And really, the big question with this, and this is really where the science is going right now, it started with, the question started at first was where is it and how much is out there? And then it went to how is it affecting animals? And now we're at the point where it's asking the question, how is this affecting people? And the big question for people is this issue of biomagnification, which basically shows that as you move up the food chain, the toxicity level of chemicals actually like extrapolates and gets higher and higher the higher you get. Where are people in the food chain? We're at the top. We're at the top, exactly. So there is a very good chance that we are getting much worse doses than these animals who we can see are getting sick and bad things are happening. So we could actually be getting like the worst of this. So are we being affected? We don't entirely know yet, but we do. There are some studies that are starting to come out. There is one that came out a few months ago that definitively links microplastics to stroke, heart attack, and early death. So the evidence is out there. Essentially, if you were to take this whole presentation from the beginning to where I am right now, because people litter, we're sick. We have plastic in our bodies. Because people litter, we have plastic in our bodies. Just flat out. And unfortunately, this is a story of doom and gloom. It really feels like it is. There was one point I gave this presentation and someone was actually visibly crying at this point. And yeah, I mean, a lot of this is very, very shocking. It absolutely is. And it can feel like there's no hope. But there absolutely is. But we have to do something about this. We can't just sit back and do nothing. This is a huge issue that we need to do something about. And Keep Pinellas Beautiful is trying to do our part to help make a difference within our community. We actually have one of our ambassador programs. We train volunteer leaders to go out and actually help collect water samples and then filter them and look at them under a microscope to get a sense of plastic concentrations in our own backyard around Tampa Bay. Just not for the sake of pointing blame at anybody or anything, but to show it's here. This is an issue that matters to us too. It is important for us to know this is out there, for us to be able to try to limit our single-use plastics. That's where the story goes with all this. So I've got just a very short clip here that shows basically what we do with our ambassadors.
I'm going to collect my water sample. All right, I got my water sample.
Awesome work. So we got to get all the water out, and we're going to do that
This was filmed at the beginning of the pandemic.
We've got this set up that we're going to pour the water in the top, and it goes through this little tiny piece of paper. But once this is empty, we'll have all of the contents from in here on that piece of paper. But it's a variety of organic material, possibly plastic material, we don't know yet. That was in that 1 liter sample, now all on a piece of paper. Scanning the filter paper here, looking to see what we can find. All this looks like natural organic material, algae or other types of sediments possibly, but oh, wait, we found a little blue fiber here. This might be worth taking a closer look and seeing what this is. This could be natural, it might not. But we actually need to pick up this tiny, tiny fiber that we can't even see with our eyes. We have to use the microscope to see it. We have to use a very fine point forceps. Pick it up and put it over an open flame for about 1 second. See how it reacts. If it bubbles and melts, we know it's plastic. If it singes and turns black on the edges, we know it's a natural organic type fiber.
It melted. It's plastic.
You're right, it did melt. That is plastic. So we have found a plastic fiber on our sample here. As you can tell, look at the edges there. You can see how the edges have kind of melted. So that's how we know. So we'll write this one down as a piece of plastic. The first one we found in our sample here. So that's basically, we've got volunteer leaders who are out and doing that kind of work, really just to help spread the word about what is happening in our environment around here. We've got videos that we make. You can see there we've got a video where we do our blender demo for kids and all those sorts of things too. We have a handout that we give at the majority of cleanups that we do that just hopefully the cleanup leader can share some of this information with their attendees so they understand why they're out there and the things we're trying to prevent. We do education outreach, we do lessons, we're around the community teaching lessons about this kind of stuff. We're actually setting up high school labs as well for them to get involved with this kind of work too, build some leadership skills and some lab skills in these kids before they go off to college. We have worksheets that we made. We've got a whole curriculum, a 400+ page curriculum that we've made, compiling lessons, basically teaching this whole story of plastics from start to finish, with the most important part being what you can do to make a difference. And this is the thing. Hope is not lost. You might be sitting here thinking, I'm just one person. What am I supposed to do with this massively huge problem you're talking about? Well, if all 8 billion people on the planet were just like, I can't, then nothing's going to get done. It takes each of us just all doing our own little part. And if we all do our own little part, it adds up to something huge. It really does. So I love to use this analogy that I want you guys to pretend when you go home today that by accident you've left the kitchen sink on, it's clogged, there's water all over the counter, all over the floor. What is the first thing you would do if you saw this, other than say, oh no, or use worse language if you're really upset? Yeah, turn off the water. You turn the faucet off, right? Yeah, I mean, at some point, sure, you're gonna grab towels and mops and you're gonna start wiping everything up. But if you did that while the water was still pouring, you would just consistently be using towels, cleaning the same spots over and over and over again. And essentially, that's what we're doing right now, is replace this faucet with plastic. Plastic is getting poured into the environment over and over and over again. And don't get me wrong, doing beach cleanups, using the towels and mops to wipe up the mess, it helps because you are actively removing the parts that are actively causing harm from the environment. But if we don't stop the flow of plastic into the environment in the first place, we're just going to be doing these cleanups forever, in the same places over and over again even. And we can't just keep going that way. The solution is prevention. We have to, number one, just don't litter. Just don't litter, flat out. That is the biggest solution you can possibly do, is just don't litter. And if you're about to start using a single-use plastic, I like what you might probably have heard of reduce, reuse, recycle before. There's a whole pyramid of words right now that all start with R. It's not just those three anymore. And basically, you work your way from the top to the bottom. The biggest part of the pyramid to the smallest, basically, is what you should do. So if you're about to use a single-use plastic, the first thing you do is rethink. What else could I do instead? And that's where in your brain, you work your way down that whole pyramid and try to choose one of those options instead of using that single-use plastic. So for instance, you can refuse to use plastics in the first place. I like to use the example of straws. I got this bucket of straws right here. This is just a small sampling of straws we find doing our beach cleanups. We use about 500 million straws every day in the United States. What else could we do besides use a plastic straw when we're ready to have our drink? What else could you do?
Drink from the glass.
Yes, that's it. Just drink from the cup, drink from the glass. If you don't need a straw, just don't use it. You have the option to skip the straw. Some people need a straw. They do for whatever reason, and that is totally fine. But if you don't need a straw, you have that option just to drink from the cup itself. If you can't flat out refuse to use it, you can reduce how much of it you're using in the first place. Just try to use less of it as you go on. Not just reducing, but reuse. Find ways to reuse. Even single-use plastics themselves can be reused in certain ways. Pretty much for anything that is a single-use plastic these days, there is some item that you can use instead that is a reusable option for that. Bring your cup is perfect that you're using right now. You can wash it and clean it and use it again and again. That's awesome. Like I've got my bottle that I bring with me everywhere I go. Keep your bags just in the trunk of your car. I hear a lot of people say, I forgot them. I forgot to bring them. Well, they collapse. They're flat. You can put things on top of them. If you have them in your car at all times, you'll be much less likely to forget them when you go to the store. And you don't just have to use them at the grocery store. Use them at Walmart. Use them at Target. Bring them into the mall with you. You can use them at any store. It doesn't just have to be the grocery store that you use those things. Maybe you can repair. You can fix your items before you throw them out or whatever you're going to do. Use them more. Repurpose. That's one of my favorite. Honestly, you're taking the item, and after you're done using it, you're changing its purpose and using it for something entirely new. Like you could take a milk jug and turn it into a bird feeder. It's about your creativity. This is the great thing. Like this picture in the bottom left, somebody turned all of this marine debris into art. Basically, they're slowing down the waste stream. They're showing that these can be used for other things. And I think that's pretty fantastic. I got a couple smiles. I'll take it. Okay, good. And then recycle. Yeah, recycling is great too. But do you see how low on this list recycling is? Is recycling your number one option? No, it's near the bottom. Recycling, if you do it right, is great. But if you don't do it right, you're not recycling at all. And every single city has their own specific rules for what you can and can't recycle. I know you grabbed one already, but I have up front here recycle guides. And it's extremely useful, made by solid waste, the county, that just helps make sure that you're recycling right. Because that is actually a major issue that I've now created an hour-long presentation just on how to recycle. So if you ever want me to come back and teach you exactly how to recycle, let me know. We'll come and do that. But basically, the issue right now, so this is basically the hierarchy of how we've dealt with solid waste up till now. Is the biggest thing we did is we just throw everything out, it goes to the landfill at the bottom. And then we're lucky. Here in Pinellas County, we have a solid waste facility that can convert our waste to energy. They burn it and can convert that to energy. They conversion technologies, which is great. We recycle and compost a little bit, but the last thing we focus on is actually just reducing what we're using in the first place. That is completely upside down. This is what we need to be doing. The biggest thing we have to focus on is reduce and reuse. That's got to be the biggest thing we focus on. If you can't reduce and reuse it, then recycle what you can and compost what you can too. And then if you can't do that, let's take our waste and let's try to convert it into energy to use it for something. And then really the last thing we should be looking at is throwing things away at the landfill. That's the least important thing that we should be focusing on. So we actually have on our website, if you go to tinyurl.com/KPB plastic free pledge, there's these 10 items that basically you get to pick and choose which of these 10 you think you can do. Maybe you can do a couple, maybe you can do all 10. But basically you're pledging to say that you can do some fairly basic things just to help save the planet when it comes to single-use plastics. So there you go. I invite you guys all to do that. Is there a better option? Well, the best option is to go zero waste, which literally means you are making no waste at all. I know there was a few years ago, I started watching like a YouTube TED Talk or something, and this lady comes up and she's got like this, like a jar of, like a pasta jar, an empty pasta jar, or sorry, a sauce, not the pasta itself, but like and just walks up and has little bits of trash in it. She's like, this is all the trash that I made in the last year. And I'm just like, how? How is that even possible? Like, that is near impossible. You could, but it's near impossible. But we can strive for this. We can make little changes at a time. When you're at the store and you happen to see, oh, they've got reusable lunch bags. Let me get those. And you get them one time. Another time you go to the store and you say, oh, they've got reusable produce bags. Great, let me get those now. It's about making little tiny changes over time. It's not about completely changing your lifestyle and trying to start fresh immediately. Just make some little changes over time. When you go to the restaurants, and you order a drink, you can say, please just don't put a straw in my drink. Because a lot of times they just bring it with a straw already in. Or if they bring you your drink and offer you a straw, say, no, thank you. I don't need a straw. Honestly, you're saving that restaurant money. The less straws they use, the less straws they have to buy. So they should be saying thank you, honestly. It's the little things that we do that add up to something huge. So what else you can do? Join us. We are always looking for volunteers all over the whole county. Volunteer, we do cleanups, we do beautification events, we plant trees, garden projects, remove invasive plants. Always looking for people to join us. Tell us about your community needs, of like what you guys need. And we have a lot of different kinds of youth programs. It's not just youth that we focus on, but it is a huge part of what we do because we need to get the kids involved for them to understand. Just very quickly, I'll go through these. We have a Kids Can program. We do these at least a couple times a year where youth get involved, like K through 5. We do events just for them and their families to get them involved. We have a Volunteens program. Middle and high school students who need community service hours can do that with us and get through all of our programming. Youth Advisory Council. It's like a student council for the environment. High schoolers from around the county get together, and we have 20 of them right now. They create their own programs and projects for other youth. So amazing leadership building skills. Our ambassador program, I've got information on the front table. We're looking not just for high school students, but adults too, to get involved and help us run our programs. That's how we're able to do 1,300 events a year, is because we have some ambassadors who step up and they can help us run these events. We have an online course and a summer workshop that basically they're environmental leadership. It's chances for these kids, and adults can take it too, to learn about what you can do to make a difference, dives into a lot of these topics that we cover as an organization. For the summer workshop, they can earn 40 hours of community service. They get to meet and greet with environmental professionals. They create their own solutions to local environmental problems. We're actually writing a grant. We just submitted a grant to actually turn many of the projects they came up with during this week into actual reality. Because they were such good ideas. We're like, we need to actually make these things happen. So it's really cool stuff these kids do. We're wanting to partner with every single high school in the county. We have a high school chapter program. We've got 13 of them right now that basically we help support their environmental or service club. We literally just give them more opportunities of things for them to do as a club. All the program I'm talking about from start to finish is free. None of this stuff that I've talked about today costs any money to get involved. It's totally free. We just want to inspire people. We want people to get involved. when it comes to any age. We also with the youth and adults too, cleanups, beautification projects, education, all this kind of stuff we do. But the first step, remember, educate, engage, empower. You've got to take what you learned today, don't keep it to yourself. You've got to talk to other people too and tell them what the issues are and tell them what they can do to make a difference. Because then you got to get engaged. We have to do something to make a difference. If we don't start doing something, by 2050, we will have more plastic in the ocean than fish. So we've got to do something to make a difference, you guys. Otherwise, that's it. Any questions or anything?
I'm curious.
Yeah.
Ocean plastic, what role the fishing industry plays?
It's a good question. It's about 80% of marine debris comes from land. So 20% comes from the ocean. People that are out on the ocean actually dropping stuff. So there definitely is a huge component of, I mean, you find a lot of, cargo nets and fishing gear and all that kind of stuff out there too. That probably is the good majority of that 20%. Yeah.
You know if that's by weight or like number of...
I don't. That's actually a great question. I'm not sure if that is by weight or by number of pieces. My guess would be by weight. That's kind of how they tend to count these things. More so than by pieces, it's by total weight. Yeah. Good question. Yeah.
Yeah, have they, and the material scientists, have they come up with anything that might possibly replace plastics?
They're working on it. And that's a great question. Honestly, we're in a really cool time right now that people are caring about this issue and doing more about this issue than they ever have in the past. They are working on making bioplastics, things that if they're littered, sure, just like any kind of litter, they're going to cause harm while they're out there, but will hopefully and actually decompose. That basically could replace plastics in time. They're still working on it. They're still trying to come up with better methods and things like that. But there are some companies out there like Phade, P-H-A-D-E, is making these things that are actually compostable and biodegradable that can replace your plastic straws and things like that. So it's happening. And there's a lot of other interesting solutions that are out there. There's this project called the One Ocean Cleanup. I don't know if you might have heard of it before, maybe not. It was started maybe about a decade ago by a 17-year-old who basically realized, he's like, like all this ocean and like all this plastic in the ocean is traveling with the gyres. Like we could essentially use the gyre to clean the ocean. And so he came up with this whole system of creating this giant net to put out in the ocean that floats with the gyre that collects the plastic into it. And then when it's full, it sends a signal back to shore. And then the big cargo ship goes out and collects the net and empties it all. And they're basically using that plastic to make like furniture and other things. And it's really cool. It took a while for them to perfect it, to get it right, but it's working now. And they predict that within the next 10, 15 years, they can reduce the amount of plastic in the Pacific Ocean by half. Like there are people who are coming up with cool things. There are universities that are trying to come up and create bacteria that can eat plastic. So, I mean, they're working even on that too. But I mean, there's a lot of testing that needs to be done with that first. Like this is like potentially the start of any horror movie, like any zombie movie. You create bacteria and then release it in the environment. And then it's like 5 years later and there's like 10 people left on the planet and they're trying to avoid all the zombies. So clearly there's a lot of, testing that needs to be done before they just wide release bacteria. But there are people who are trying to come up with solutions. So we are living in a cool time. That yes, we still continue to make more and more plastic, but we have people more so now than ever that know about this issue and are trying to do something about it. But we can't just rely on them. We've all got to do our own part too. Okay. Well, thank you for having me, you guys. Yeah. Now get out there and do something.